Hey everybody. So I'm continuing to learn about and spotlight organizations doing work at the intersection of food and racial justice. In this episode, we touch on food waste, on trying not to waste food, how I recently did waste some food by not putting it in the freezer when I should have, and then it going bad as a result. And part of the reason that the guilt of wasting food feels extra bad right now is the increased exposure that food workers face at every part of how that food makes it into our homes during this pandemic. That's why this week I wanted to spotlight an organization called the Food Chain Workers Alliance. According to their website, the Food Chain Workers Alliance is a coalition of worker-based organizations whose members plant, harvest, process, pack, transport, prepare, serve, and sell food, organizing to improve wages and working conditions for all workers along the food chain. The alliance works together to build a more sustainable food system that respects workers' rights based on the principles of social, environmental, and racial justice, in which everyone has access to healthy and affordable food. This podcast will be making a donation to the Food Chain Workers Alliance, and I hope you'll consider doing the same at foodchainworkers.org. I discovered them via a website called Civil Eats, an online publication that examines issues of social justice in our food system. Thanks, and here's the rest of the show. Hello, and welcome to Stay for Dinner, a podcast of cooking, curiosity, and conversation. If you love cooking, hate cooking, have no idea how you feel about cooking because you've never tried it before, congratulations, you are in the right place. The place, for the first time ever, is not my small apartment kitchen in Los Angeles. It is somebody else's apartment kitchen in Los Angeles. We are currently apartment sitting, or at least we were when I am recording this. It's exciting. This apartment has a dishwasher. It has a hood over the stove so you can turn on a fan if it gets too smoky. It has all kinds of stuff that our apartment doesn't have. And the most exciting thing during quarantine is just that it is not the apartment that we have been in for the past 4 months at this point. Wow. I am excited today for a number of reasons. The first of which is that, I guess, change of location, very exciting and novel. The second is that I am super excited about my guests. That is right, plural, guests with an S. On the show today, for the first time ever, I am talking to a couple about where cooking does or does not fit into their lives at the moment. We have comedian power couple Kristen Bartlett, head writer of Frontal With Samantha Bee, and Jason Gore, aka Dudio from The Best Show, a podcast that I have loved for a long time, and they are married to each other, and they are on the podcast today. I will pull back the veil a little bit and say I have already recorded this conversation. I am not going to pretend like I haven't, and therefore I am not going to pretend like it wasn't tremendous. I had so much fun talking to them. They're both so funny and cool and interesting, and we had a great time. I think you're going to love this. I got so cocky about the content contained herein that I completely slacked off coming up with a recipe to make this week. And so I was looking around at what I was going to do. And that is when I realized that in our apartment kitchen, we had a pork shoulder. I love pork. You might know this if you listen to the show at all. I have... it's a go-to for me. I really like braising pork, and you can do all kinds of different stuff with it. It's super delicious and versatile and easy, and I guess so take it for granted that we got a pork shoulder on our most recent grocery run, and then it's not that I forgot about it so much as just too much time went by. I should have put it in the freezer. I didn't, and listener, I realize today is beyond the pale. There is no saving it. I'm so bummed. It is such a waste of food and money, and I feel terrifically guilty about it. I was so bummed. I really don't like throwing food away, and that's exactly what we had to do, because no human nor beast should really be consuming it at this point. It got really gross, or at least it was getting there. It was not able to be eaten. And that so bummed me out that I thought, okay, rather than trying to find a recipe and see what do I have. I'm going to go, what do I have? And then that is going to be the recipe. Something we talk about a lot on the show, but I'm a recipe person at heart. That is my base. That's where I'm comfortable. And so that's where I most often go to on the show. And today we're not doing that. We're trying to use stuff in our fridge that's about to go bad. So I have ported that over to where we are staying and we are going to use it. So basically this is the plan. This is the plan as I've conceived it based on the stuff that I brought over. I have some collard greens that are, again, they're like on the edge. They hold up really well. That's why we like getting them. But if they're in the fridge for any longer, they're not gonna really be something that we want to eat. So I'm gonna be using those. I have a bunch of scallions that are similarly, questionable. They're right at the moment where you really got to start using it, or especially the greens tend to go first. I feel like the whites stay edible longer and usable longer than the greens, I would say. The whites are still great. Some of the greens are starting to look a little bit on the edge, so we're going to be using those. I have a lemon. I have a little thingy of basil that I'm going to be using. Have some garlic. And then I have really one of our quarantine MVPs and a longtime favorite of both Haley's and mine, egg noodles. I love egg noodles as a starch. I think they're so great. We used to eat them all the time as a kid. On the side of stuff, we used to have them with Parmesan. We used to have them with butter. I would just make a plate of egg noodles and salt it and eat it. And that was a starchy afternoon activity that I never regretted. I really, really like egg noodles, even just plain. But I'm going to be incorporating them today. We've used them in a lot of different contexts in quarantine. And then the centerpiece of the meal, the other night I made some meatballs because we had some ground beef and we had some ground pork. And I looked up a recipe on Food 52 for Rayo's meatballs, the restaurant that famously in New York City has like 9 tables and at least 7 of them are always being taken up by those sorts of cast members in The Sopranos or Goodfellas or other Scorsese movies where you're a little bit like, oh, that person actually did do some of the stuff that they are also now just portraying in the movie. Like, oh, there's a guy, I can't remember his name. He's like a private detective, and I think he's in Wolf of Wall Street playing himself, and he's outside of Rayo's. I always think of him. I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. But that's kind of okay a little bit too, because I think he might be like a Trump guy, so I'm not also necessarily looking to venerate him, although he is great in that movie. There's a lot of scummy people playing themselves in that movie, including, I think, Jordan Belfort at the end playing himself, or not playing himself, but he's like in it at some point and is like just so not as tall as Leonardo DiCaprio. That guy lucked out in a lot of ways in terms of his portrayal. So we are going to, basically the plan is, I'll just articulate the plan out loud. The meatballs themselves, the other night we had them and I just put them in like a tomato sauce. And I was kind of saying to myself, like, I wonder if you could do something relatively lighter with these that isn't a sort of heavier tomato-based sauce. And I think the answer is yes, because I think they're pretty neutral. Basically, they're just beef and pork and eggs and breadcrumbs, parsley, garlic. I think that's it. Am I forgetting anything else? Oh yeah, water. You put in some warm water at the end to kind of get them loose and just, I don't know if I would use the term fluffy, but they're not super dense, which is nice. They cooked really nicely and I had half a batch left. So I'm going to be using those as our base. Basically, my plan is I'm going to brown those in a skillet and then I'm going to take some sliced garlic and my scallion whites and cook those in the resultant fat from the meatballs, get a little base of kind of a sauce or something going, and then once those are cooked down, going to probably add the chopped collard greens and a little bit of lemon juice, maybe a little bit of lemon zest, trying to use every part of the lemon. And yeah, and then I think basically just cooking the egg noodles on the side, adding those into the collard greens and the base of my sauce, stirring that all around, and then topping them with the browned, cooked meatballs. And then that's going to be it, I think. Probably scatter some chopped basil on top. Call it good. What do you want to call it, by the way? I don't know. I hope by the time this episode comes out, I've thought of a better title than Meatball and Egg Noodle Surprise, because I don't think that is going to capture what I think is going to be a somewhat relatively nice light summer meal, given that it features Rayo's meatballs, which the recipe I found on Food 52. I can't remember if I said that already, but it was a really fun, easy, good recipe, and they turned out great the other night when we had them, and I think they'll turn out great here. And I want to use them. That's the most important thing that we're doing tonight, is using the stuff that we actually have. I like to talk about it a lot. I try to do it, but this pork shoulder thing bummed me out. I really don't like that we had to get rid of that much perfectly good food. That sucked. So here we go. Redemption. First things first, I am going to put a pot of salted water on to cook my egg noodles in, get that boiling. And then they have a really nice heavy-duty, pretty high-sided, like 12-inch cast iron skillet. So I'm going to get that out as well. And that's what we're going to do our meatballs in, and basically kind of try to reduce dishes as much as possible, even though they have a dishwasher over here. And I think those are going to be my two hero pots and pans for the proceedings. Going to go ahead and start heating up my skillet. Got that over medium, probably turn it up to medium high here in a minute. And in the meantime, I'm going to start doing my mise en place. Cooking in other people's kitchens is always fun to me in theory and somewhat in practice, but it's also pretty stressful in practice just because usually you have all your stuff where you know you like it, and if you've developed habits around that, you just know where things are and you're used to reaching for them and then being there. Less so the case when you are cooking in somebody else's kitchen, but that's also kind of fun. Forces you to think a little bit differently, adjust to the different sorts of tools they have and stuff like that. And we're going with it. The first night we were over here, I think I was also just experiencing the night when I was making the meatballs, I think I was also just kind of experiencing a certain amount of having been in the same house for months on end and then being somewhere else and just sort of experiencing that transition. So it's starting to stress me out a little more than it might have or probably should have under the circumstances. Just being like, oh, that sort of, I don't know, a little bit of a Shawshank Redemption-y thing where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then you get somewhere else and you're like, yeah, but I'm used to being there. That's probably a touch over dramatic, but you know what I'm saying. So I have peeled these collard greens off of their stalks just with my hands, and then I am going to be cutting them into ribbons. Going to do the beginning of every Blue Apron recipe ever, if you ever cooked any Blue Apron stuff, and cut the scallion into white parts and green parts and separate them. There's a reason that you would see that, back when we were doing Blue Apron, that we would see a lot of that in recipes, is because it's just green onions are great in that they are both in one organism. You have what can be the sort of base note, sort of onion note for your meal in the light green and white parts. And then in the green tops, you have what is most often and very easily becomes a really nice garnish. It's great. One part is cooked, one part is fresh. You're using two parts of the same thing. It's super efficient. I love it. I have my scallion greens in a bowl, my scallion whites still sitting here on the cutting board, ready to be called into service. And now I am going to cut up a couple cloves of garlic. And I'm going to slice them, and usually when I'm slicing them, the only downside is I don't usually do my trick that I like to do where I smash the cloves to peel them with the side of a knife, because that makes them harder to slice coherently. They tend to break apart. So just Just peeling them the old-fashioned way. And I'll probably do like, I'm going to do a lot. I'm going to do like 4 cloves, I think. Plus, if I slice the garlic, it thematically connects with the Goodfellas reference from earlier. It's sort of a cliche, but it's the best. Best depiction of food ever on screen when he's slicing the garlic. Or among them, anyway. Oh, you know what I'm going to use too, that I just had a sense memory of, that's clearly filed in my brain next to sliced garlic, is red pepper flakes. All right, have my garlic all sliced up. That's about it, with the exception of the lemon. I'm going to do a little bit of zest and a little bit of juice. If I remember, I might sprinkle a little Parmesan at the end. Again, we're improvising. And then everything should come together quite quickly after that. All right, I have a good bit of lemon zest, and then I'm just going to cut the lemon and sort of juice it as needed. And then while I'm thinking of it, I just cut up some of this basil to sprinkle over top at the end. My experience, basils can be kind of delicate. So since I'm not using it for pesto and getting it really ground up, I'm not going to really cut it up too finely. I'm just going to chop it and sprinkle it over top at the end, like not as finely as I would parsley or something. All right, now we are going to drop our meatballs into the skillet. I'm just doing them, I'm trying to think, did I do olive oil or something in the skillet the other night? I can't remember. I think I'm just going to do them direct to skillet so they'll get nice and brown. They have a lot of moisture in them and a lot of fat and stuff that I think is going to become the base of our quote-unquote sauce. Maybe I should have done a little olive oil. It's not too late. The fan is great for sucking up cooking vapors. Not so great for audio. That's okay. We'll see how it goes. Now it's a little bit lower. In case I missed it, I did end up adding a little bit of olive oil to the pan to fry the meatballs in. All right, so the meatballs have been on one side for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So I'm gonna flip them and see what they're looking like. Oh yeah. The answer to what were they looking like is really nice. They got a really, really nice dark brown on one side. One thing I'll say about these meatballs, and maybe I use too much water, but they do end up kind of, as they cook in the pan, kind of flattening out a little bit on one side. So by the time I ended up turning them on a number of sides the other night, and I'll probably get the same thing tonight, they almost ended up being like pyramids or something. Like they have definitive sides to them more so than like orbs. But on the other hand, you got a lot of really great flavor from all those sides that were cooked, so it's a trade-off. When that egg noodle water gets up to temperature, I'm not going to cook them for very long. I'm probably going to go like 5 minutes. The package says 9 to 11 minutes, but in my experience, they cook really fast. I mean, they're pretty small. And I don't want them to be fully cooked by the time I pull them out of the water. And while I wait for that, I'm going to turn my meatballs again. They're cooked on 2 sides. And by now, there's usually at least one other side that I can press them onto. Some of them I'm sort of leaning up against each other because that's the only way to get them to go onto that next side. And it's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be good. All right, my water's boiling. Dumping half a package of egg noodles into the water and setting a timer for like 4 minutes. 5 minutes? 4 minutes? Let's go 5. Stir the egg noodles a little bit so they don't stick. All right, and I am going to call my meatballs good. I'm going to pull them off to a plate. So now the pan that had the meatballs in it, I have the heat turned way, way down. Gonna let that cool off for a second, pull out a wooden spoon and start my quote-unquote sauce by sauteing the light green and white parts of the scallions and the sliced garlic. And just as I suspected, it's cooking really fast, so I'm gonna keep it moving because I don't want it to burn really. Just for like 30 seconds or so, getting it fragrant and infusing the flavor in the fat. Trying to do a fair amount of scraping the bottom of the pan if there's any good cooked on parts left over from the meatballs. It smells really good. Almost instantly. All right, it's been about 30 seconds for that. Don't want to keep them going too long because I don't want them to burn. I'm going to add my collard greens. Stir that around, get everything incorporated. And then salt and pepper. Squeeze in a little bit of lemon juice. Oh, you know what I should have done already, but didn't, but will do now that I'm thinking of it? Red pepper flake. Just got a little bit of hot grease in my eye, that's exciting. All right, my egg noodle timer is going off, so I'm going to drain those. Reserving a little bit of the water, of course. All right, got my noodles drained, and then I'm going to add the lemon zest to collard greens and taste that, and then maybe add a little bit of lemon juice, depending on how they're tasting. Nice, I'm just going to do a little bit of lemon juice. They were already tasting pretty good with the zest. I don't want to overdo it. And then I'm going to add the egg noodles to the pan with the collard greens. Stir that around. And I think I can safely turn the fan down now. Okay, I have to give myself credit for pulling the egg noodles off when I did, because they're right exactly where I want them. I'm going to do a little more lemon juice over top, but this time over a strainer so that I don't have to pick seeds out the way I did before. A little bit more lemon zest, a little bit more pasta water, just to create a little bit of sauciness. I don't want to cook the pasta anymore really because it's right where I want it to be, but to create a little more sauciness. It's not super saucy. I mean, it's pretty much just the noodles and the collard greens, but it tastes really good. Yeah, this is pretty much it. I'm just going to dish it into 2 bowls. Probably grate some Parmesan over top, sprinkle the basil over the top once I place a couple of meatballs each per plate. Oh, one thing I forgot is I'm going to stir in the scallion greens. I was going to put them over the top, but there's a lot of them, and I think they'll do better just a little wilted in the pasta itself. And that's it. That is, what do we want to call it? I have not thought of a better name yet while I was doing all that. Sound off in the comments, I guess. Meatball, egg noodle, collard green surprise. Please enjoy this conversation with Kristen Bartlett and Jason Gore. I know I did. They are an absolute fucking hoot, and here they come to you live and direct, or recorded a few days ago from New York City. And again, thank you to them for coming on. They're both super busy because they're both super talented, and I loved having them. You will love them too. So, Jason, Kristen, thank you so much for joining me. If this were a normal episode of the show in normal times, I would be placing a plate of delicious food in front of you. Unfortunately, I can't do that. So all I can do is just hope that the last thing that you guys ate was delicious and satisfying.
It was.
It really was.
I just hit my watch against the table, by the way, if that was the really loud sound that you heard. I just made omelets. for lunch.
Ooh, what kind of omelets?
Just ham and cheese, real simple.
Yeah.
Jason has been really wanting an omelet, but all of our pans, like I do stainless steel pans, and they're great, but not really good for like the sticking. And I just,
Right.
My boss gave me a lovely gift card to a fancy kitchen store, and I used it to purchase a Staub skillet. And
nice.
it's beautiful, and
it's changed our world.
the cast iron is amazing, and so I just made some omelets, and they just were perfect.
They were best omelet I've had, and I've been wanting omelets for years, but we couldn't do it because every time we made with the stainless steel, it creates such a mess. Even if you like try to prepare yourself and get enough butter on there, thinking that it's not going to be a mess, it's always a mess.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the big drawback of stainless steel. I feel like Haley's folks gave us some stainless steel kitchenware a few years ago, and it took us a long time to switch over to that skillet from the old, just like definitely toxic, rapidly decaying Calphalon nonstick that we had, because it's just so convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely, I feel like the longer that you're married, the gradual that you replace your cookware with really good cookware.
Oh, because we started off with some total dog shit.
100%. The first cookware that we had
was like Big Lots.
No,
brand.
it was actually that was the second. The first one was Walmart.
Yeah.
And that was like the nonstick.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that like as time progressed and you start to see like little black flecks of nonstick stuff like come off into your food, you're like, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
And,
but you still eat it.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I did. Yeah.
I just call it cancer pepper.
Yeah.
It's like a flavor packet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we switched. How long ago was it that I was like, I'm ready to purchase good? It must have been.
I want to say it was in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think so. That we were finally like, let's invest.
Right.
And yeah.
And it is an investment because that shit is expensive.
It is expensive, but it's so nice.
It is.
And this Staub, though, that is a delight. So I bought a few Le Creuset pieces about 2 years ago, which has been a joy.
But always on sale and from like outlet stores.
Outlet stores, also QVC.
QVC.
Whoa.
Yep.
QVC is going to have a deal.
Like fully watching QVC, like with the TV on, or is it like an online thing?
No, QVC, this was when I was working at SNL, became my comfort place. Like, I do that. I love ASMR. Do you love ASMR? Like, how do you feel about all that?
I have never actively sought out ASMR content, but it is something that when I hear something that's supposed to be ASMR-ish, I do experience the sort of nice, relaxing feeling where I totally get why people like this.
Then you would love QVC.
I think QVC is a good gateway ASMR. Like, it's like people doing demonstrations. Like, it's very gentle. It's like, it's very slowly cut.
Vacuuming up cereal and the sound of that.
Yeah. And so there's this show called In the Kitchen with David Venable.
And we watch it every week.
Well, no, we don't.
We try to.
Right now, we do.
Yeah.
It's a 3-hour long show where this man, David Venable, who is a character from North Carolina.
He's a sweet Southern man.
He just like shows off food and cookware, and they will be selling like pans, or they will be selling like, honestly, like a big 300 set of pot stickers or something. Like it's just a delight.
He also does this thing where, they're doing like Corky's ribs or something like that. And every time they do the food demonstration, he'll take a bite. And if it's something that like really warms his heart, he does something called a happy dance, where he puts his hands up in the air and he goes, happy dance, and just spins around a few times.
Okay, so that's like I love food shows, obviously, but like what I love about him is that he eats all of the food.
Yeah.
And it's just a delight. He's kind of a big guy, and like if they're selling like, steaks or something, he's like fucking in there and he eats the steaks.
Or hot dogs. And every time they're selling like a meat, I look over at Kristen and I'm like, should we?
And we never have, but we could.
Yeah.
Someday.
I partake pretty much every Christmas of some food item from QVC because my stepmom's mom, my grandma Mary, former guest of the podcast, is obsessed with QVC. They have her card on file. Like she calls up, she's already like 7 tiers of the, she's going right to the main, person at QVC. I feel like when she calls up, and she never doesn't order something from QVC. Like I can't really do her Pittsburgh accent, but every Christmas will be like her leaning over, just like something will come out, we'll be eating it, and she'll lean over and be like, "Do you like that?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, it's great, Grandma." And she'll be like, QVC? Like everything is from QVC.
I love that.
Oh God.
So what are some of the items? Because I bet I've seen them.
I mean, a lot every year, pretty much without fail. And sometimes like she's had long running health issues. And so some Christmases she's been out like every other Christmas for the past few years, but even when she's not there, she always sends Junior's cheesecake.
Oh, yeah.
Oh God, that is a big item.
It really is. And they like do the individual cheese.
They do the sugar-free cheesecakes.
Cheesecakes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. I love it so much. This is, to me, like, it's like the most soothing television that there is, and that's what I'm after. I don't want anything suspenseful.
They do the Germac nut mixes.
Which we've ordered.
We have ordered.
I ordered the Germac nut mixes and took them to SNL, and people went to town on them.
And they have, like, the best, like, the Christmas line is always the best because it's, like, Christmassy names like Frosty's favorites.
It's
and
the
it's
best.
like if a snowman liked a nut mix, this is what it would be.
Give me that nut mix all day long. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Does it come in a tin?
They're like little clear, like they do have glass ones, but they're usually we get the plastic, just a plastic little thing of nuts.
We tear through them.
We do.
They don't last long.
And I'm gonna get them again this Christmas.
Yeah, I'm ready.
They're a GD delight. That's how we start.
Are they from somewhere in particular? Like, does Germac stand for something?
I think Germac is maybe a company in Pennsylvania.
It does feel like Pennsylvania. Hang on, we're Googling it.
Germac nuts.
I don't know what it is, man. I'm just like only after. Yeah.
No, they're in Detroit.
Detroit.
Oh, wow. Right on.
Yeah. But, man, they've got the best nuts. They really do. Like, their nut game is real solid.
I love QVC. Like, so David Venable, and so my friend Halcyon and her parents, we went with them to a tour of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And
Whoa.
yes, and we did this 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah.
Around the holidays.
Yeah.
And or maybe it was after the holiday. Either way, it was cold. And David Venable was there, and he's a rock star. Like, people treat him like.
Yeah.
I can't. I want you to see this.
It's the same as like if Keith Richards walked down the hall. This is their Keith Richards, and everyone stops and they watch, and he's just like, "All right, I got to figure out what I'm eating today."
It's great. It's Sundays from 12 to 3, and there is nothing more soothing. I would love to be a host on QVC. I just would love it. Like, there's something so soothing. You just get your nails done, and you touch products.
Yeah.
And like, God, like.
You eat a lot of mac and cheese.
Yeah, you have a little bite of mac and cheese.
Everything's mac and cheese.
But you run your hand over, like.
The mac and cheese.
Over like a tablecloth or something like that. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
And so we were there. Obviously, we were the youngest people there.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think people were suspicious of us because we were laughing at things a little bit. But at the same time, we were laughing. It was with love. And it's just a very interesting process. Like, this is, it's the most soothing thing that there is. And I don't know, man. My life, I feel, has gotten progressively more and more stressful in the past 5-6 years. And so I feel like I just crave...
You're the only one.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
One of the guys that does like the automotive things on QVC, he was in a break, so he stepped down to talk to the fans and like take a picture with us. Like, I think he was getting ready to show off like one of those windshield covers that you can put on your car to keep the snow off and everything.
Oh.
He was so excited to see us. He took pictures. And he's like, "Guys, you know what? This is why we do it. We do it. You guys are the reason we're up here talking about these things. We do it for you."
I love it.
And it was so heartfelt. And I was like, "Yeah, thank you."
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited for you to watch this. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, do you have cable? I don't know. We have cable.
We're the other people that have cable. There's only a few of us left.
Oh.
But
You're on. I'm so excited that
Yeah.
you have it. So 12 to 3, QVC, David Venable. It's just a 3. Sunday.
Yeah.
Just, it's so long. I mean, 3 hours? You know, that's a crazy thing. And like, you're probably gonna end up buying something. I do think that's how we got our Vitamix too. Like, I mean, I don't buy a lot, but I do. When I do buy, it matters.
Yes.
It is a little bit from the QVC that I've seen. I used to, in high school, I would like leave my TV on at night to go to sleep. And sometimes it was either like QVC or the Weather Channel, I feel like were my go-tos. And I do think there is something about the narratives that they spin with the products and the fact that it's like a really trusted voice just being like, this is something that you'll really like there's something, it feels like they're kind of assuring you that like everywhere along the chain of this product showing up in your house, it has been like lovingly made and selected and cared for and presented to you now and then sent to you by all of these people who like really want you to have the best ribs or whatever they are.
I mean,
and it works. I mean, I think especially as you're saying, Kristen, like, you know, being a grown up and having, you know, and obviously the world being increasingly stressful and work sometimes being stressful and all those different things. Like it's easy to have like decision paralysis where you're like, we should get some dishes or some nice things. We're adults. We should have a nice, you know, blank because we're going to use it every day. But then when you go to try to figure out which one you're going to commit to, it's really hard and maddening. And so there is something about just somebody being like, look, I love this. It makes me do my happy dance. And you're like, I believe you.
And I've been won over completely. Mm-hmm. I also find QVC to be hilarious. Like, I think it's like, I don't know. It's like it's just very funny. The people on it are deeply funny. The calls are very funny. And I love it's just a little bit of real awkwardness when someone calls and talks about their experience with the product. And to see them try to hang up is very funny. Like they're trying to like let people go.
Okay, now you take care.
And like, it's so hard to get these people off the phone. So I find it to be very funny, and I'm always like after that like new hard comedy, like when normal TV shows don't do it anymore, QVC is the thing.
QVC and House Hunters.
Oh God, House Hunters is fucking delightful.
Are the two things that really do it for us right now.
Yeah,
I do think if you're, you know, you are both comedy professionals, purveyors of scripted comedy, and I think that it's a fairly universal experience among people that do that then it's tough to go to scripted comedy, things that are trying to be funny on purpose.
Yeah.
To be funny, like to scratch that itch.
Totally.
I think.
Totally.
Like that's why we watch Bravo reality shows, which are in many ways funny on purpose, but it's not the same
different
thing.
It's definitely different. And I feel like I do like scripted shows, but when they get me, they have to really get me. I'm not there for just like something midland.
Right. Like Detroiters, that got you.
Yes.
Love Detroiters.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite television show.
I love that.
We were just, I guess it was last night, maybe. Yeah, because it's been since Carl Reiner died. We were watching All of Me, and there's a shot at the end where they're getting ready for a party, and the catering company is called Devereaux Catering.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, we have to watch Detroiters again.
We watched Detroiters at the beginning of quarantine.
Yeah.
While we're freaking out and hearing nothing but sirens in the air in New York City.
Oh.
And it was one of the things that I think truly got us through.
It's joyful.
A couple of those really tough weeks.
It's so joyful. I love that show. But
isn't silliness underrated?
It's the best. And they're
it's just such a silly show. Yes.
Yeah.
Like there's a supreme love for each other. It's not mean, and I just really love them. I don't like
absolutely. Yeah, Haley and I were talking about that. Like, just silliness and sweetness, I feel like they're just the most underrated comedic elements.
I totally agree. I agree.
So, where as we touched on it a little bit already, but where does cooking fit in or not fit into both of your lives at the moment?
think it's very important. It always has been. I am the main cook, I think, in the family.
She's the best cook. I'm an okay cook. I can do like a taco kit or like a soup if I really like.
Yeah, you do a minestrone.
Bear down and try to figure it out and give it the time because I'm a little ADHD.
He likes a recipe, this guy.
And I will lose interest quickly.
I think for me, I started cooking when we got married and we were living in Atlanta and I was working a day job at Turner Broadcasting as an assistant. And I really wanted to be writing and I really wanted to be creative, but I didn't know how to do it. And suddenly cooking became an outlet. And when we got married, we were gifted with all of this like cookware. And I had never really cooked before, but when you have all of the tools suddenly, like, you know, you want to use them a little bit. And so I had the Joy of Cooking cookbook. That was one of my gifts. And I feel like I just started cooking and it became a real creative outlet for me when I wasn't writing. And so that was honestly 3 years. And I think I became a good cook. And one of the reasons that I became a good cook is that Jason was just so damn happy whenever I made anything. It was like constant praise. Like it was, and I don't know, man. So that it was like, you know, training. I mean, I hate to say it was like training a dog. Like when you say like, ooh, this is the best thing in the world, then I'm going to keep cooking. And so I kept doing it. And but
I wasn't lying. I was honestly.
No, I know, but I also part of it is that you just really love food.
I love food. I've always loved food.
So like he would say like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten, and then like later.
But it was.
But later he would talk to me like nostalgically about a hot dog sandwich that he used to make in the middle of the night. Pieces of white bread and Okay, go ahead.
Here's the recipe. So what I would do is I would get up, and my grandmother would be watching a repeat of Carson at like 2 a.m. And I'd be like, I'm hungry. We lived with my grandparents. And I'd be like, I'm hungry, Grandma. And then she would think like, oh, poor baby, go make you a hot dog sandwich. So a hot dog sandwich was 2 slices of white bread, 2 cold hot dogs cut in half. So you have 4 halves, ketchup,
Ew.
And Miracle Whip.
Gross. That's disgusting. But then, so when he like waxes poetic about that sandwich, and then at the same time says how the thing that I made was the best thing, I know the truth.
They could both be equally wonderful to me. Like I would still make a hot dog sandwich right now.
Well, I know that you praise me because you just love to eat, you know. But that still made me a better cook. Like it still had the end effect of making me better.
You've seen me not enjoy food though.
That I make?
No, in general, so you know what that's like.
Sure. Yeah, but
But there's also the high-low effect of like, Kristen, your cooking is like is high culture, and then the hot dog sandwich is low culture, and they can both intermingle and be equally valid.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's
Jason's like the Andy Warhol of eating.
Yeah.
I think so. You like it all, though.
I will say, whenever I hear that Tonight Show theme song, though, my mouth waters a little bit.
Absolutely disgusting.
You know, Doc Severinsen starts playing that trumpet. I'm looking for the Miracle Whip.
Jesus, Miracle Whip and ketchup together. Fuck, that's just.
But I do think it's important to kind of highlight, though, that for I guess for people who don't cook, that like you were saying, starting basically from not really cooking, Kristen, and then kind of like, you know, having a lot of tools, which obviously helps, and then having this cookbook to work from that's basically been for people for like however long it's been being published. Like it's got to be almost 100 years at this point. Sort of this thing that's just going like, this is the book that you should read if you don't know how to cook, and then it'll just give you a lot of stuff to cook that people really like. And if you make something from it for someone else, or just something in general, that person is probably going to be like, whoa, this is really good, and mean it, because being cooked for is really nice and homemade food is really nice. And I just think like, I think that's such a barrier to entry sometimes for people who don't really cook, is imagining like, and then I'm going to make something for somebody and they're going to just be like, oh, it's good, through gritted teeth. And like, the fact of the matter is they're probably going to say they like it and mean it, because homemade food is wonderful.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah.
And then, so how have you developed over the years? Like, how has your relationship to it kind of evolved since that initial joy of cooking stage?
I think now I can improvise a lot better, and I know how to I love homey food. So like I love Southern foods because that's where I'm from. So I love like making chicken and dumplings in the winter, and I love like roasting a chicken. I think there's something so homey about that.
Yes.
And then I feel like a pioneer. Like I love taking bones and making stocks. Like that feels so good. And I don't know. I just love doing that.
Yeah, we literally use every bone.
That's awesome.
I really love to do that. And for a very long time, like Jason would call me the bone collector because in the freezer I would keep a bag of bones.
Yeah.
From whatever. Like
it was frightening. You open it up and it looks like a catacomb.
Yeah, like buffalo wings or something. Yeah. I would keep all the buffalo bones.
Yeah.
And I would just make stocks from that because it just feels so good. It feels like you're just creating something from nothing. I love, love, love that feeling. Yeah. And if we didn't live in New York, I would love to have chickens. Like I would love to have a farm. Last year, with the help of Carol Hartzell, we grew jalapeños, and I loved that. Like, like she like made us like these little starter kits, and we put them on the balcony all summer, and like had fresh peppers for guacamole and all kinds of. And I love that so much. So I love that sort of like ground up kind of thing, and I love reading books about. I love like the idea of butchering. I mean, I don't think I would like to do it, but I like the idea of breaking an animal. Like, I think that's like just, I don't know. I was also raised on like Little House on the Prairie and stuff like something I just like love like the idea of like being able to make something from nothing.
Yeah.
During quarantine, like that's been especially true. Like, I don't know. So I can definitely get to the kitchen and be like, okay, I think I can work this out. I don't need recipes anymore, although I still use them for like new things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can, and I'm a really good gravy maker.
Oh man, her gravy game has really exploded with this Staub thing. Like, she leveled up.
Anyway,
do tell.
Yeah,
well, it's just like I don't know. There's something so pleasurable.
She loves, like, when she roasts a chicken, like, we take the chicken out of the roast pan.
Yeah.
And then she puts the roast pan over 2 burners and uses the whole thing to make the gravy.
Oh, man.
And in that point, like, the gravy is just as important as the chicken to her.
Totally. And then what I do, so then I make stock the next day. And then whatever leftover gravy there is, I put into a pot when I'm making, when I'm like sauteing like vegetables for a soup, I put the gravy over the vegetables because that's a thickener for the soup. So I just like fucking love using every single bit of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
that's awesome. That is something that I have always meant to have that approach. I really love roasting chickens as well. And you always read like, oh, if it's less expensive and better to just get a whole chicken and like break it down yourself rather than sort of saying, oh, I need chicken thighs for this recipe. Okay, let me buy a thing of chicken thighs or whatever, like that you can do that yourself and it's easier and better, but it's only now in quarantine that like I had the bag of bones for a really long time that I was keeping, and then I would just sort of forget about them and they would become the frostbitten bag of bones.
Oh, yeah.
But
fine,
you can still use them.
Yes. No, finally now in quarantine, we have started to get into a flow where I actually will make stock with like the bones and some veggie scraps and all that stuff. And I wish we had a better like, I would love to get some sort of composting thing going because we produce a lot of coffee grounds and a lot of little weird scraps that can't go into a stock. And I would love to be more that way. There's something that really appeals to me about it. And also, I think when you were saying like literally taking the roasting pan and putting it over burners, that to me is like when you see somebody use a pan that's not necessarily for its primary purpose intended to go on the stove, that's real like chef stuff. I don't know. I love, I think like that's so cool.
And then you can drain, I don't know, I started using schmaltz too. So I would like drain off some of the fat and like keep that for other things.
Yeah.
We did bacon fat a little bit this summer, or this spring, I guess, cooking with bacon fat. Yeah, no, we composted for the past 2 years. We stopped composting during quarantine because we're trying to avoid the number of trips to the trash area and the elevators that we were taking. So like that's one of the things that we've given up, which I think Jason really appreciates. He fucking hates composting.
I love the idea of composting. I love what it does, but I also am the one that has to take it and dump it into the big composting.
We all have our jobs.
That always has rotting spaghetti in it. And there hasn't been a time when I haven't opened it and just gagged a little. Even holding my breath, I know what it's going to smell like.
Never once have I been the person to do that.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. Like, I'm cooking, so you have to take the scraps.
I know. That's my lot in life. I get it.
So we've actually become less environmentally friendly during this. But we'll be back again when there's a vaccine.
Yeah, I will. When there's a vaccine.
Yeah.
Jason, when you get that first face full of rotten spaghetti, you're going to tear up a little bit, and not just because of the smell. You're also going to know, like, we did it. We made it to the other side.
What's so gross about it is that this building actually takes the compost once a day, don't they? I think they do.
They used to.
Maybe not right now.
Yeah.
But they did. So that means that someone was, like, holding on to their rotting spaghetti for a long time. Yeah. You know? Disgusting.
And then one day I opened it and somebody put like an old boombox in it. Like they didn't understand what the container was for. But I wasn't going to touch it because it had spaghetti on it.
Yeah, it's disgusting. I don't know.
But if you let it break down over a long enough time and you bury it, you will grow like, I don't know, a cassette?
Yeah.
How does that work?
A cassingle.
It will grow. Yeah, I'm not really, so I don't know, like, if I'll ever have the patience for growing things, but I
would love to, though, like, especially being in quarantine.
Yeah.
All I can think about is, like, a garden. And,
I would love for you to do that, and then I can cook the things that you make.
Yeah.
The idea of, like, standing in the sun, though, I'm not into.
I'm all for it.
That's great.
How much more balcony space do you guys have? I mean, can we get this going? Like, what's...
This is the tiniest balcony. We can put one chair on it, and the little jalapeno plant was like one little thing
in the corner of it. It's not like a rectangle. It's kind of like
a little triangle.
A little triangle.
So it's just a tiny little balcony, but it's like the necessary, because at times it's our only outdoor experience.
Sure.
Like it really is. God, we've got to move. We've got to move to LA. This has been hard. Too hard.
Yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah, if you are thinking about expanding your balcony garden at all, I gotta say, consider mint, because I have killed every other single plant that I've ever tried to grow, like herb plant.
Yeah.
And this mint was just like hanging on, couldn't kill it. And then I went out a couple weeks ago onto our stoop, and it was completely bare. And I was like, did some of our neighbors come over and like, were they making, a mint julep? Like, what's happening? And it was just completely picked bare. And I was very bereft because, like I said, this mint is the sole survivor of a very enthusiastic trip to the guy that sells like fresh herbs at the farmer's market near us, probably like 18 months ago. And the mint was still hanging on all through quarantine, all through forgetting about it for weeks, everything. Then it was completely bare. And then I noticed that I was like, well, there's one green thing on this still. And I realized it was a caterpillar. It's like just the cutest little green caterpillar had completely decimated it. And I was like, how is it going to grow back? It doesn't even have leaves to soak up the sun. Doesn't it need that? But I just sort of started watering it anyway. Uh-huh. And it's now completely, this is a week ago, it's back. Oh, we're good. We got so much mint. We got mint coming out of our ears again. Mint is
that sounds amazing.
So mint is stronger than you would think. Like, I don't know why, but you would think like rosemary or thyme or one of those. It's really sort of like the savory herbs. Nope. It's mint. Mint's a killer.
I would love a mint plant. I would do a mint plant, and sweet caterpillar that had like the best time of his life.
Oh yeah.
That's adorable. Yeah, I would definitely do mint. I would make like mojitos, and I would make, what I would make? I would do ice cream with it, because mint chocolate chip is my favorite kind of ice cream.
Yeah.
Do you guys make ice cream at home?
We do.
She does.
Nice.
I just love doing that stuff.
It's real good.
Do you guys have an ice cream machine? Are we getting real Little House on the Prairie? And is there like a rock salt and a churn flow?
I grew up. My parents had a rock salt like thing, but I have a KitchenAid like mixer that is about 15 years old now.
Yeah.
And they have like an ice cream bowl attachment. So you just pop the bowl in the freezer and then you put it on the thing whenever it's frozen. And it makes it good.
Good to know, because
Yeah.
we also
Yeah.
have a KitchenAid.
It's a really solid little attachment. It doesn't take up too much room.
And it's fast too, because like while that's in the freezer getting cold, you can mix up your ice cream fluids.
Your fluid.
Yeah.
Your base.
Yeah.
Your ice cream
They
base.
have that ready to go and nice and cold, and then you
David Venable does not have anything to worry about in terms of competition.
more about the fluid.
making the process of making food sound delicious.
The fluids that are required. Yes. No, I do. I make I don't know. I've done I'll do a strawberry ice cream. It depends on what kind of, if we've got fruit that is ready to go.
You've done cherry, you've done vanilla.
And I've done mint chocolate chip, and I've done chocolate chip as well. Yeah, I like making an ice cream, but again, it's I don't know. I was making it a lot. Last
2 years ago.
No, it wasn't long ago.
Or last year.
I think it was last summer.
Yeah, last summer you made a big vanilla batch.
Yeah. I was getting into it because I bought a machine for work, which is living at work now, for soft serve. And
whoa,
yeah, it was really cool. You put your ice cream mix, your fluids, into the top, and it kind of turns it out into this spinny little soft serve. And you can also put in mixins.
Yeah, all the fixins are on the side of the machine. Mixins.
So little chocolate sprinkles and things like that. So then it kind of and nuts. And so the way that it shoots it out, the mixins are already in the ice cream. I don't know.
Yeah.
We made it. We did this 3 times, and I'm done with it now. Because how many times are you going to work with this machine? But it lives at work, and someday when we can see each other again, they can use the ice cream machine.
Right.
So there's just this is the saddest short story. Just a unused soft serve machine sitting alone in an empty office in Manhattan,
and a freezer.
Mix-ins at the ready.
Yes. So Sam B, we have an ice cream club. So there's a freezer that is specifically devoted to really artisan ice cream. There's a lot of Jenny's. There's Milkmaid, which I don't even think exists anymore. I think they stopped. But there's all of these ice creams. I would say a good 20 little pints of ice cream are in this thing and have been since March 11th when we were evacuated from the building, because that building was one of the first coronavirus clusters in New York City.
Wow.
Ice cream has been in there
because
for months.
of 60 Minutes.
Yes, there's a 60-minute show on Quibi, and that's the one that got everybody sick. Someone got sick and really went through the whole office. We didn't get sick. I still believe in my heart that I was sick in January of all times after a trip to Paris. But yeah, we didn't get sick from that. Who knows?
I do think that is that is one of those things that will be hard to explain to people after that we're not around for this in years to come.
Yeah.
Where it was sort of we all were pretty sure, or at least hoped, that we had already had it in February. Everybody was like myself included. I'm yeah, pretty early on. I had just finished working this job that was in an office. And then the first couple weeks of quarantine, my nose was really runny. So I think I'm good. I don't want to find out. I'm not tempting fate by trying to find out, but there's a part of me that thinks that antibody test would come back positive.
We took an antibody test and it's negative, and the only thing that makes me feel like we definitely still had it is the one study that came out that said antibodies only last for 3 months, because it would have been about 4 or 5 months by that time.
And also the antibody tests, and during the time that we took them, they were only 50-50.
Yeah, but here's the reason why I think I had it, because I lost my sense of smell for garlic. For a very long time, I couldn't eat garlic from mid-January until into quarantine. So about 2 or 3 months, the smell of quarantine. The smell of garlic smelled putrid and disgusting, and I love garlic. So it was a very
wow.
It was very weird.
So you had that that cilantro thing where cilantro tastes weird to some people, but for garlic, and only temporarily.
And then when it went away, Jason at that time. So I had just become head writer of the show, and I asked Jason to take a bigger step for cooking, because I just couldn't handle it all. And
it's a lot of hot dog sandwiches.
Thankfully, there were no.
Kristen would come home and be like, why is this old Carson playing?
Just disgusting. And yeah, there was like a moment where I was like, you can't use garlic for a while because it just really makes me want to be sick. I don't know what it is. Anyway, who knows? Maybe it's hormonal. Who fucking knows?
Well, but then I had some weird heart issues.
Yeah, you did.
That the cardiologist couldn't explain. They did like they did a bunch of tests and everything, and they were like, everything looks great. Can't explain it.
But it was like in the middle of like a really intense like cold for you too.
Yeah.
Anyway, who cares? This is just the hope that you've had it, and it really doesn't matter because neither of us has antibodies, which means we could absolutely get it again.
Yes.
I know. I so wanted that to be the answer too. I think we all did. Yeah, it's. Oy.
We have to continue staying inside for 1 million years.
Precisely. Yes, all of our mental time horizons have now shifted to the also feels optimistic January 2021.
I know. It's such a crazy thing to think that like all of my so it's July, and yesterday was July 1st, right?
Yes.
And I was like writing in my little journal, and I was like, I'm so glad that this year is passing as quickly as possible because like I feel like it's just moving quickly, and I don't care because I want it to be over. But at the same time, like nothing's going to change. Like 2021 is going to be just as bad. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like January, we're still going to be in this. It's going to be worse.
Yeah, I don't see us getting out of this like with any sort of positive change until this time next year.
Yeah, I don't know.
But who knows, man?
I do think that for some reason 2016, I mean, I know the reason, but like 2016 was the beginning of us all, myself included, having this magical relationship with calendar years.
Yes.
Where we're sort of like, oh man, 2016, right? The worst. Anyway, it's over. Now it's, 2017. You know, like every year since then, I feel like we've all been like that. And that was the worst possible year. And collectively, ironically, setting up this current year that we're in to be like, this is really the worst.
I remember writing a sketch at SNL about 2016, and I don't even remember what it was, or like working on it with someone else. And Lauren specifically was like annoyed by it. Like, and he wouldn't let any jokes about 2016 being bad go through because he was like, it's just a year. Like there have been many bad years. And even though all of us were convinced that 2016 was just like a truly like monumental year, and I remember being annoyed. I was like, everybody's talking about how bad this year is. We should be allowed to be able to say that it's a bad year. But like for whatever reason, he was like, no, we can't say it's a bad year.
2020 would be worse.
He maybe psychically knew that this would be a worse year. I guess he's lived through way worse years than 2016, although I really can't imagine what they could have been because that was a really, really bad year.
Well, Kristen, let me tell you about a little thing called the gas crisis. It took a long time to get gas, and you were mad at Jimmy Carter, and boo boy. But luckily, there was also the Allman Brothers. I don't know. I have a fuzzy idea of what the 70s was.
That must have been a really rough year. I don't know. A rough year for every. But yes, this is a truly epically bad year. I feel we're all going to come out of it with extreme trauma. I feel like this is so depressing for your podcast, and I'm so sorry to say, but I also feel like in terms of like cooking, I feel like this is a time where everyone is cooking. Everyone's maybe tired of cooking at this point, but I see myself like being like, oh, I could be fine living in a house in the middle of nowhere and just living the rest of my days in the kitchen and not doing anything else. So that's my
sounds great, right?
Right? That's the dream now. The dream is
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the it's almost, you know, it's like the Ina Garten dream. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's that I'm just going to kind of, and maybe you're living like somewhere near a larger urban area. If you want to come in and really be like, I need a specialty, you know, I need Zatar or whatever. And you can still go to like a specialty place and get it.
Yeah.
And then other than that, you're just kind of back on your farm or whatever. And you just make stuff, and then you put it on a checkered tablecloth, and people eat it, and it's great.
You make shit by yourself. Jeffrey shows up later, eats it.
Yeah, Jeffrey has to be there.
Jeffrey, yeah.
He's in the Reagan administration, I think. Like, let's not look under the hood too much on Jeffrey, but
right.
I don't know, man. I love Ina Garten so much.
We also watch The Pioneer Woman a lot. I don't know if Pioneer Woman.
I have never gotten super deep into the Pioneer Woman oeuvre, but anything I ever make that's a recipe of hers is really, really good.
It's great. Her food is really
simple stuff. The quarantine episodes have been amazing.
They've been a treat.
The first episode of the quarantine series, she made an 11-can soup. Yeah. Which is just what you It's dumping 11 cans.
I love it. So Ree lives on a ranch, and she has basically 2 houses. So the early episodes, which I really recommend, involve her driving from one of her houses to the other, because she has a lodge and she has a main house. And God, what a life. To drive from your one house to your second house, to go cook in it and bring the food back to the first house. That's my goal. Living in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City has made me like, I won't be satisfied until I have 2 large houses
that you can drive.
Yes, in the same
same county,
in the same area. Yeah. I want to be able to drive from my one house to the other house. That's my goal.
With a Dutch oven on the passenger seat next to you, buckled in like a tiny hot.
Yeah.
And she
filled with 11-can soup.
A grill outside too. That's also really gorgeous. Like that giant thing that she has. Like it's just a massive.
Yeah.
It's for cooking for 100 cowboys. There's really absolutely.
That should be a name of one of her cookbooks. Cooking for 100
There's really
cowboys.
no reason to have that grill, but I still want it.
Yeah.
And also right now we watch a lot of Guy Fieri. Like we watch so much diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Triple D.
Speaking of like something that's like both soothing and because we won't be eating in restaurants for another year. It's a beautiful treat to watch someone go into a restaurant and eat something.
Yeah.
Isn't it? We find like on like Real Housewives of New York or something when they go to their just like bar, like they're sort of like singles in their 60s, divorcee, like hookup bars on the Upper East Side. And when they're hanging out at the bar, we watch that now and it's like we're staring into Valhalla.
Yeah. And I know exactly the shot you're talking about. It's like Luann, and Ramona's
too busy. She's double booked.
And that weird, like way too touchy. Like the guy, hey, ladies.
He touches all 5 of them.
And when he touches them, I'm like, oh God, coronavirus.
Also, like the first episode of New York this season, there were 2. I think maybe Sonia was one of them. There were 2 housewives who were sitting, like outside in a park having a coffee. I think like an iced coffee, and it was like, oh, the pleasure of that. like it was like clearly fall. It was clearly like September, and you're sitting outside with a friend.
You didn't know this virus was just months away.
Just that is like, God, to be sitting outside with a friend and no mask and just enjoying a coffee. Holy shit.
Yeah.
My whole standards of living, I think, coming out of this will be so... I don't know how quickly I'll go back to being like, no, I need this much to be happy again. It'll probably be 30 seconds. But at the same time, I just like think about like, God, like just that. I saw my first friend on Friday. Yeah. My friend Joey, and I hadn't seen a friend since, we've seen like the people who live in the building coming and going, but like I hadn't had a hang. And we have a hang scheduled today as well.
Yes. but a distanced hang.
Well, all of the hangs are distanced. Yeah. Like it's just like...
No, they are.
They are. It's like separate. And, we're bringing our own drinks to drink our own drinks underneath our masks, Like, I know I'm going to get a straw. I don't know how that's going to work yet.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing. And I just... fuck, what is happening to our lives?
Yeah, we had our first friend encounter this past weekend at a, again, distanced mask, full masks, no, all the whole, at a dog park, we're outside, all of that. And the level of endorphins that I got from literally in those first 30 seconds of what are normally when you're interacting with, when you're interacting with people that you like, are like, oh, hey, where did you park? Whatever, just like this sort of nothing small talk. the level of endorphin rush that I experienced was wild.
Yeah.
It was like birth of your child, I would assume, level. Like, it was really all out of whack.
God.
And it was very, I know what you mean. I'd like to think that we'll never take it for granted in the same way again.
But we will.
And judging by how emotional I'm getting in this moment, I can imagine it'll take a while for it to wear off. But everything does eventually. There's a certain level of, like, in Mad Men when Roger Sterling takes LSD and his whole personality changes, and then a couple days later, Don's like, "What happened to that whole thing?" And he's like, "It wore off." Yeah. Like, I do think there is something to that as well.
Yeah.
But I do think this is pretty big stuff. This is a pretty big change.
Right?
To undergo.
We're definitely going to have a moment. God.
Like, our grandparents didn't deal with this.
No.
I mean, they had World War II and all that stuff, but, like, not a pandemic. Like, they never had to deal with the masks and, like,
I don't know,
loved ones dying and
it's
stuff.
Really, truly, unbelievably traumatic, and it's
no loved ones died in World War II, famously.
Everyone survived.
No, but I know what you mean, and I do think it's, like, literally something that affects every single person on the planet.
It's right in front of you. Like, World War II, that was, across the ocean. This is like something that could be in your home, and that's
across the ocean. I love and how sure of it you are.
Yeah. There's two oceans.
There's two oceans.
There's obviously Holocaust deniers, and Jason is in no way one of those, and thank God. But he is a part of a even more exclusive sect known as World War II minimizers.
You believe,
guys, it was a skirmish.
You believe that it happened, but you don't believe people cared.
Yeah. Of course they cared. My grandfather fought in World War II.
Okay, there you go.
So
you're backtracking. But he survived it, and that's the difference.
He survived it.
Well, while we're in the past, growing up, who did both of you see cooking around you when you were growing up?
You can go first.
My mom would always cook things. She would always make, like, this weird bagel recipe that doesn't taste like any other bagel, but I really enjoy how it tastes. It's, like, a little too sweet for, like, the bagel you would get in New York.
Jason's mom makes, and I think she's a great cook. I'm not denigrating. Jason's mom makes, like, 70s recipes. So, like,
a lot of cream cheese.
A lot of cream cheese and a lot of
maybe not now, but when I was growing up,
yes.
she was very strong on the cream cheese.
A lot of, like, two combinations of frozen food together. Yeah. I'm going to say one of the things that she prepared for me was pepperoni tortellini soup.
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's delicious. Delicious. It's what I grew up on. That's what I like.
Jason grew up on these. Like, I feel like working mom concoction.
She posted a recipe from the Pioneer Woman last night that was, like, the best chocolate sheet cake ever. And I just commented, bullshit.
But what was in it?
And it's just, like, a simple, like, recipe.
But
Mom was like, I made this for you all the time. And I literally don't remember her ever making that cake.
That's very funny.
I remember her making this thing that I used to refer to as butterscotch shit, which was, like, a layer of graham crackers on the bottom or just breadcrumbs or whatever. And then, like, butterscotch pudding.
From a Jell-O box.
Yeah. And then, like, a bunch of whipped cream type stuff.
Cool
with
Whip.
Cream cheese. With cream cheese.
And whipped cream is Cool Whip. That's what.
Yeah, Cool Whip and cream cheese mixed together with nuts on top. And I would want it every birthday.
Yeah. And I have never made it for him. And I know that that's wrong, but I'm like, no, let's make a scratch cake. Let's make a cake. Like, your birthday's in September. Let's make something with apples.
No, this September I want butterscotch shit.
Gross, disgusting. She also makes something called cherry yum yum, which I think is just exactly the same, only with cherries.
In addition to the butterscotch, or in place of the butterscotch?
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Yes, there's maraschino cherries, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's so good.
So that is, like, but I think, like, it's, like, very simple, like, back of the box.
Dad Dad, when he cooked, he did two things really well. He did chili, and he would do a potato salad.
Yeah.
And those are still both two of the best things.
Also, I'm not shitting on this food. The food is good.
Yeah, it's good. It's just different than stuff you make or stuff you grew up on.
Right. Yeah, this food is good food, but I just feel very guilty making it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you're telling me.
I feel guilty defrosting a Cool Whip. I don't know.
Why do you feel guilty?
I don't know, because we can so easily make whipped cream.
Like, yeah, but it doesn't taste like Cool Whip.
Doesn't it?
No, God, no.
God.
Cool Whip has its own, like, there's that weird chemical flavor in Cool Whip.
Yep, there is. For my family, my grandmother cooked, and then my mom cooked us. So, like, and Mom was working mom as well, so she would make recipes that she would, leave work at 5, and so that she could have, like, dinner on the table at 6, because we were voracious, like, as a teen, or as like a kid, like the hour of her preparing food, like I couldn't handle it. So it would be like, like very simple things like chicken and rice. She would make strombolis, which I fucking loved. Like, but things that she could put together quickly. Or she would do crock pot cooking a lot. And then when she had like time on the weekends or whatever, she would make chicken and dumplings, and she would make fried chicken, and she would make like Southern food. I think what are things that Mom like also loved Jason, like as soon as she met him. So she would always make sure when Jason liked something, she would always be making sure that food would be there for him when he arrived.
I remember so Kristen was on study abroad in London. When I drove down from Radford, Virginia, where I lived, to Black Mountain, North Carolina, where she lived and her parents were, to, ask for their permission to propose to Kristen. And they made like a steak dinner and shrimp. And the whole time, like, I got the conversation over quickly so we can move to the food. And they love to tell this story about how when Kristen was little, she would refer to shrimp as baby chickens.
Yeah, that was the way they liked shrimp, which is horrible.
And were you saying it in a horrified way or with relish?
It was more like they tricked me. I didn't invent this. This came from them. It was like a full lie.
Yeah.
But like I wouldn't eat shrimp until they said that it was baby chicken, which seems awful. Like it seems like I would be much more scared to eat something called baby chicken. But I was more like, nope, I can eat this. This is fine. It's a meat that I've heard of.
Right.
But no, like my mom, like Jason loves my mom's chicken salad. So
oh God, she makes the best chicken salad.
So like if she's going to be near him, she like, we like go on, I mean, I don't know if we'll be able to do it for a while or if this can happen, but we usually take like a fall beach trip in North Carolina, and Mom always comes. She drives 6 hours, and she has a cooler that has the chicken salad in it because she knows that he loves it. So like, It's very much, I grew up with food is love, which is why I'm fat.
I do too.
Yeah, but like that's definitely like very much like what I grew up with, and it still is today, like a thing that I'm repeating. So thank God we don't have children. But when I make this food for you, I'm saying I love you, and when you eat it, you're telling me that you love me, and that's like so much of what our culture is. And I also think like when my grandparents were still alive, like that, I would go to them after school and stay with my cousins, and they would make like early grandparent dinner. So that would happen at like 4:00. And so I would eat like my first dinner, and then I would go to my...
It'd be like a pork chop and some other stuff.
Totally. Like coffee gravy. Like, so I would eat like first dinner. That was when I was really little.
Yeah.
So that was like primary school. My grandmother died when I was in the 5th grade. And so that was that tradition ended, and maybe like that tradition only really went through the 2nd grade because that's when my grandfather died. But for my formative years, I had 2 dinners.
I did too. It was just a late dinner with the hot dog sandwich.
Middle of the night dinner. Yeah. So these are all of the reasons that go into our body types. But I think that's like Southern cooking. It's like so much is like, so that's the food that I really love. God, I fucking love. And I also love like going when we're home for the holidays, like we help with the holiday meals now. And it feels so good to see like my mom be impressed by the way that I make something, because she thinks that I make a better gravy than her. And like, so I love that. Like, I love like feeling like I'm carrying on these traditions, I don't know.
Mom made a banging lasagna. That's one thing I remember Mom would make.
So what went into her lasagna?
Oh, it was just like tons of noodles, a lot of meat and sausage.
Okay.
Like more ricotta than you needed. But also cottage cheese, too. I remember using cottage cheese.
Yep, that's a classic Karen.
And my mom's name is Karen. This isn't like a Karen of today.
It's not a 2020 Karen.
Right. This is,
A 1996 Karen.
Yeah, this is 1992 Karen. Yeah, and it was just so gooey and so perfect. Man.
What about you? Like, what foods did you grow up with?
I grew up with a lot of like southwesterny stuff because I grew up in Arizona. And my dad both my parents had pretty much grown up there. I mean, my dad was born there and I think my mom was born in, I'll get back to you on that one. But my dad was definitely born like in Phoenix. And so they had grown up with, a decent amount of Mexican food and sort of like Tex-Mex or sort of Southwestern style food, basically. So we would have a decent amount of, for all that, like our taco nights were still pretty much like everybody else's in America's taco nights, where it's sort of like, shells from the box and the Lowry's like taco seasoning mix and ground beef and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we would also do, I was just super into, it was effectively a like open-faced quesadilla. It's sort of like bastardized quesadilla, which we would get at restaurants and then also would frequently be made at home, which was just called cheese crisp, which was just a big tortilla sprinkled with, the sort of like 3 cheese blend and melted and then cut into slices. And as I'm saying this, I haven't thought about cheese crisp in a really long time, but it was just a thing on so many like Mexican restaurant menus growing up, I feel like.
Right?
That's pizza, right?
It's a Mexican pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Effectively, although I do feel like in the 90s, you would see people attempt a quote unquote Mexican pizza and it was like different. It would have like taco sauce and stuff and ground beef and stuff on it.
Lettuce.
But yes, I think it was probably truer to the spirit of pizza than that was.
Yeah.
But I don't know if anybody
that sounds big.
I don't know if anybody would claim cheese crisp. I think it was maybe
I gotta look this up.
Sort of like Mexican restaurants in the Southwest being like, we're mostly serving white people and let's just give them something that they'll recognize what it is immediately. And it was cheese crisp. Sometimes we would get it with like canned chilies on top. And it was phenomenal.
I looked up cheese crisp and the first thing that popped up was a recipe for Arizona cheese crisp.
That rolls.
And
it might just be an Arizona thing. That's fascinating.
And it takes 1 large burrito-sized flour tortilla.
Check.
A tablespoon of butter.
Okay.
Half cup of grated cheddar cheese. And 1 or 2 roasted chilies, peeled, seeded, and cut into strips. And
see, that I think is even fancier than most places we're going. That's like actually using a fresh chili is pretty, like you're having to cut up.
It looks delicious, though. I want to make one of these.
That looks like a late night joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's closer to the spirit of I could totally be wrong, and I'm willing to be wrong, but I think it's closer to the spirit of the hot dog sandwich than anything culinarily actually from Mexico.
No,
if I had to guess.
I feel you on that. Yeah, it really feels like it is.
I think one of the things about quarantine, though, that I'm just remembering now, because it's kind of moved away from this, is like at least initially, all of the restaurants that we loved weren't delivering. Like a lot of things shut down, like early March or mid March, late March.
Wendy's ran out of meat.
Well, I wasn't thinking about Wendy's. I was thinking about Sophie's. Like I'm thinking about like Cuban food, not being able to get that. And so like there was a time, I would say like early April, where I just started making the foods that I had never made before that I was like, I'm dying for. So I would make sofrito, which I've never made before. And I use that to make like Cuban beans, both red beans and black beans.
Best beans I've ever had.
And making rice with sofrito as well, which was really delicious. And then I also when I make pulled pork, I always just like put it in the oven really, really low all night long. I did pernil. And
Yeah.
so that was different. So it was like cutting into the fat
Yeah.
to score it, and then stuffing that with like spices and herbs and marinating it as well. And then like it just made, wait, what are they called? I'm blanking.
Chicharrones.
Thank you. Like, so I had never made chicharrones before, and so I've made them twice since being in quarantine, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think there have been like moments when I've just been like, oh God, I have to have this food that I no longer have access to, and so we've just made it, and that's been a treat.
Yeah.
But now,
That's cool. And it's cool to know that you can do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? That you can like something and then make some version of it yourself. And it's probably going to be really good.
yeah, and definitely like with an eye on what you're putting into it too.
A lot of the Chinese restaurants around here have been closed.
Right. So I never made fried rice, so I started making fried rice.
Right. It's delicious.
With like leftover white rice. Again, I love to put this stuff in. I love to feel as though I'm not wasting stuff. But yeah, fried rice is such a simple thing, and I had never made it before. And like knowing that you can make it is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. We love making fried rice, and it's a great fridge cleaner. It's such a good, you can just kind of put a whole lot of different stuff in there. Do you have an approach or a system for keeping track of the stuff that you have? Like, how do you keep an eye on, okay, we have like half of a red onion in aluminum foil in the back of the fridge? That is an issue that we encounter sometimes, is we intend to use everything we have, but sometimes we will lose track of the sort of scraps or things that we have on hand.
This is a great question. And also, I'm about to be crazy for you.
Yeah,
is.
Please.
So right now we're not doing this because I feel like I have a good handle on what's in the fridge. I can quickly open it up and see what we've got.
Yeah.
But early into the quarantine, when we were really trying to load up the freezer,
we didn't know what this was going to be. So we didn't.
Yeah.
Everything would shut down. We wouldn't be able to get groceries again. We had no idea what it would be.
And I think for the first month, we really kind of stuck to this because we just basically cooked all of our food. And I think we do take out so much usually that it was like a different feeling.
Yeah.
We created a Google Doc where like we really bought a lot of food up top. Like we bought a lot of like chicken thighs or whole chickens or ground beef and like all of this stuff. And so like we really kept a Google Doc of what meats we had in the freezer because it was
their location.
Right. Because it was so full that like you couldn't dig through it, you know, like we have a lot of space. It's a small fridge and it's a small freezer. So you kind of have to stack things. So like things will get lost and you'll never know about them. So we kept this Google Doc of everything that was in the fridge and their expiration dates. And what I had been doing was keeping my onions and potatoes in our pantry. We have like a little pantry, which is also a coat closet. It's many things at once, so I don't want to like lead you astray and make you think that it's like a beautiful pantry. It's not, but it's what I've created as a pantry, and so like things can kind of like live there, and the potatoes will eventually grow into new potatoes. And so I stopped doing that, and I moved all of the vegetables into a big metal bowl, like which had a former life as a punch bowl. So that way I can easily see what I've got. So that's where the garlic and the onions and the potatoes go. And, you know, occasionally peppers, depending on what we've got. But yeah, I kept a doc. And
nice.
It was very detailed too. And it's like, yeah, we would list out all of the broths that we had or snacks.
Sure.
It gave us an idea of like what we had to target in the next grocery run that we do.
Right, because like it was we did, I mean, at first, like when we were stocking up, we did like in-person groceries, but like once we started quarantining, we really quarantined. And so it was really about like whenever we could get a delivery slot, which could be like very rare. And what they would have would be very rare. So like, you know, you would order a ton of groceries and you would end up with like 3 different things, you know? And so we had to make things like go as long as they could, which really helped. But I do think now, though, since we've definitely started ordering in a lot more. I would like to get away from it.
We've been getting, because we can get stuff that usually wouldn't deliver now, like before, and I think we just got tired. But I do kind of miss the cooking.
I know, I do too.
Because it was better for us, and
But I also think like now we have less to like keep track of, so it's easier, you know. Right. But if there's a lot, like I like to like be able to see and know what it is. And I bet like I bet like someday we'll be able to have like a fancy fridge, and I bet that already exists, where there's like a log on the fridge with what's inside, and you can just keep track of it that way, like a smart fridge.
Yeah. Like an AI.
Yeah, that would be the dream for sure, because I do think, especially right now when you feel like, well, we have thankfully stuff, but we definitely need to use it, because if it goes bad, we will feel like the worst pieces of shit in the world, because it's like we have food, but then we didn't eat it because we have too much food. That is the pits. Is that, you know, just figuring out ways to stay on top of that, especially when it comes to like those things like you're saying, Kristen, where you're like, oh, we want to use this. This would be cool. It's going to take a little bit of effort, but we want to use this like leftover thing that is in and of itself not really food anymore, but it can become food with a little bit of know-how and effort. We just have to remember that we have it and that we meant to do it.
Yes.
You just press like a touch screen on the front, and it's like, you have the ingredients for 4 hot dog sandwiches.
Jason, don't give the people at Whirlpool too many free vocal clips to
it just hurt.
Derive the AI voice from.
God, that would be fine.
That'd be a treat. Oh, that'd be a great treat.
You should just like,
I will make one for you now.
I feel like I get a lot of phone calls or like random Instagram DMs of people being like, hey, like, write this sketch about my dad. You call someone at Whirlpool and be like, I've got an idea for you, and you should push your idea on them, and that will go good.
Click.
Haley and I were just talking about the other day about, because neither of us has been getting a whole lot of commercial audition notices during this time for pretty obvious reasons, but occasionally Haley will get one and it'll be like, oh, you know, right now it's a lot of stuff that'll be like, do you actually get cat litter deliveries from Petco or something? You know, it's a lot of stuff where they want you to like film yourself in your apartment.
Yes.
And we were saying it would be really fun to, every time you got one of those, to call your commercial agent and pitch them what the commercial should be. And like, how long could you do that before they would be like, we're letting you go?
That's so funny.
Oh, God. Have you done any auditions in quarantine?
I just this week did for the first time. They had this. I genuinely would love to know what the deal was with this. But last week I got my first like notice for a commercial audition of quarantine that was like, hey, this will be shooting in person on the 9th and 10th in LA. And you can come to our office. You can come to our casting office, but you don't have to. You can like Zoom in or whatever. And so, and I ultimately was like, yeah, I'm going to fucking Zoom.
I did one audition at the start of quarantine that's going to haunt me for my entire life.
March 12th.
It was on March 12th. The night before, I had done the I'm Cool showcase at UCB Theater.
First time.
One of the last shows at UCB Theater, New York. First time doing the showcase. I'm so excited. And then there's like 30 people in the audience because most everybody was like, I'm not going to sit in the theater during this coronavirus thing. The next day, I get a call to audition for, what is it, $10,000 pyramid?
It's $100,000.
$100,000 pyramid?
It's 2020.
And they're like, hey, we saw you last night. You were great. Would you be interested in auditioning? And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And thinking that, like, it'll be Monday, and I'll have a little time to think about this. And they're like, okay, we'll call you back in 30 minutes. So they call me back, and even then I kind of thought that they would talk to me about the process a little more, but they didn't. Instead, they just threw me right into a game.
They just like made him play a pretend.
Whoa.
Isn't that so funny?
And so they're running me through the cards, like, you know, and my mind is shot. All I can think about is coronavirus.
My building,
of course,
just been evacuated. The night before, we ran to New Jersey to buy as many groceries as we possibly could.
While we're at the grocery store, we find out the NBA canceled everything. And everything. Like the president had his speech the night before. That we were like, the world is ending. Right. But she has me play this game. Terrible at it.
I'm also sitting on the couch the whole time.
And Kristen's losing it.
I feel so funny.
She showed me a card that said onion rings. And it was like, how would you explain this? And my first instinct was to say, these are not fries. And then
that narrows it down.
And then she's like, you can split the words, and then to say, this is, some, like, she was explaining an onion, and then she's explaining, this you could put on your finger. And the whole time I'm like, no, like, I can't. If I couldn't figure out onion rings, you split them into 2 words, you just made it twice as hard. And then she got to this category where she's like, types of flooring. And I'm like,
you said very quickly, you said linoleum. And then you said
concrete.
No, you didn't say concrete.
I did say concrete. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said 2 or 3, and then you were done. And I think I whispered carpet.
Yeah, and she heard. She's like, she can't help you. And then it got to a point where I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm having a hard time focusing on this because of coronavirus. And she pauses, and she's like, do you have coronavirus? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm just like, it's a lot right now. And at that point, she mentions, oh yeah, it is. It's a lot. They're actually evacuating us from our office right now. And she on the Zoom, like, cards in one hand, and the other hand is just like packing up a bag with all of her shit.
And then she got off the phone as quickly as possible. It was the weirdest, worst thing I've ever seen.
And she gets off, and here's me in my delusion. We get off this call, and I'm like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. I might hear.
And I had to be the one to tell him no. But I will say this. One of the things that I think is what makes you a successful actor.
Okay.
Is that you believe, no matter what, that you have just crushed whatever you've done. Me being a writer, I feel like I walk away with much more self-doubt.
Right.
And much more, like, self-examination. And so usually we're not in the same room for these processes.
Yeah.
So it's just the end of the night when Jason will be like,
you know what? I think I'm going to hear back from you.
Exactly. Fucking crushed an audition. And I'm always like, I don't know if they liked me, And then we walk away with our own like, psychosis, I think.
Yeah.
But, like, in that moment, I was able to fully witness an audition and see exactly what had gone down and to see just how divorced from reality.
I think after I said, it wasn't so bad, Kristen took a pause and was like, honey, you ate shit.
Onion what?
Is a real like death of a salesman moment. And it's like, as far as I know, he's been out there selling this and that, and he knows this guy in this town, and they go, and then it's like, wait, that guy's been dead for 20 years. This guy that he ostensibly sold 10 houses worth of aluminum siding to yesterday.
Yeah. Oh.
That was a beautiful. I think it was beautiful. It was beautiful to really know each other in that moment.
Yeah, remember that for the rest of my life.
It was so. That was the last. I mean, you've done some self-tapes.
I've done some self-tapes here and there, but, like, it's few and far between because, I mean,
who knows?
There's not much of anything. And all the voiceover, like, commercials, it's all like, in these trying times.
Sure.
And there's just not much of that either.
God, what a time.
We're
gonna
absolutely.
We're gonna get through
it. Quiznos. So,
did early on, before the Joy of Cooking era, the new pots and pans era, did either one of you ever cook for the other one on a date?
Yeah. Do you remember, Jay?
Was this at your college apartment?
By the way, this is, just so you know, like, the frame of time. This is 2004. So that's why he's, like, really, we've been together a very long time.
Yeah. I'm 5 years.
Gotcha. So I'm imagining everybody wearing John Kerry buttons. Got it.
Oh, yeah. We're like, Kerry's going to do it.
Can't describe how hard I bled for John Kerry.
Yeah.
No, when we were...
The Killers is Hot Fuzz is playing everywhere.
This is the one that I remember deeply.
Yeah.
So Jason came to visit me, obviously, and you proposed at this time. And I was in London, and I was living in a flat with, like, a million girls. And
taco night.
Well, taco night, yes, we do that together. But Do you remember when you made me spaghetti? Do you remember? And you made them spaghetti too. Do you remember?
I do. Everybody hated my spaghetti.
No, you didn't hate it.
It was. I put, like, so. I was living in Athens, Georgia before this with, like,
boys,
with a bunch of boys and playing rock music with them in bands in Georgia. and like we would get high and drink and be like, let's make some spaghetti. But we would pour like more wine in the spaghetti than sauce, probably.
It was canned marinara.
Yeah.
Mixed with like several cups of red wine.
Right.
And no time to build flavor.
What?
It was very wet.
Oh.
But Jason would put the mark of a good cook is being able to put as much stuff into it as possible. So
yeah,
you would slice jarred olives. Do you remember? I
do.
With pimentos, and then jars of wet mushrooms.
Yep.
And the whole thing would go in.
Yeah.
And then obviously like ground beef.
Yeah.
And it was fine though. Like I was at that point relieved to have someone cooking for me. It didn't matter. So I think no one critiqued you for your spaghetti. We were all thankful that Jason got into the kitchen and made us something.
I felt like everybody didn't like it though. I did feel that in the moment. I like basically made you a noodle slip and slide on a plate.
But yes, you did make that. I'll never forget those like sliced olives in the spaghetti.
Yeah.
Isn't that so funny?
And I thought like, as I did it, I thought like, God damn, I'm a chef. I'm really chefing the shit out of this.
I don't think I was mean to you.
No, you weren't. Not at all.
I think I was very
happy. I felt it, though. I felt like, am I not a chef?
I definitely think you never knew that. You always treated it as more is more, I think. Like, that was your, like, repertoire.
Right.
And I do think it was very funny.
More is more.
We did make we did do a taco night.
Yeah.
And you helped with that.
Right.
And the taco night is exactly what you're describing. Like
taco kit, beef.
Right.
Packet.
But in London, that was so good because at that time there was no Mexican food. So just like anything was good.
And now London's exploded. There's like great Mexican restaurants everywhere.
It's still different, but it's something that you can access, which you could not get.
Still better than a taco night.
You couldn't get it into it.
Right.
And then also, you know what you used to make for me? You would make microwaved rice. Do you remember?
Uh-huh.
And boiled chicken.
Yep. And black beans.
And black beans, but canned.
But yeah, canned beans. But I wouldn't. So if I was lazy, I would do like the Uncle Ben's packet, like of yellow rice.
Yeah.
But then there's that other like store brand that's just like a long cylinder of yellow rice that has all of the flavoring and stuff already in it.
Is it cooked already?
No, it's not cooked.
Okay.
And I would make that too because that was a Karen Gore staple too. She would make that cylinder of rice with boiled chicken that you shred up and black beans, and I would eat that constantly. It's still one of my favorite things to eat.
So you did make that for me too.
And then too.
I will say, like, sodium was the rule.
Yeah.
But the worst, but was also the sweetest. The first time I ever had a cold with dating Jason, he made me chicken soup.
Campbell's canned chicken soup.
But he didn't know that you were supposed to put a can of water into it. So he poured the Campbell's soup into the pot and heated it up and gave it to me.
It was a salt city. She's like, did you put water in it? No, why would I do that? I don't want to ruin the soup.
And I remember just handing the bowl back to you. Did you eat it that way? Or
yes, that led me to believe that the whole time, like growing up, whenever I would have my favorite Campbell's soup was vegetarian vegetable.
Oh my God.
I would plop that in, microwave it, no water.
How are you alive?
I have no idea.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
at that point, it's just double soup.
Yeah.
But also, like, just so you know, like, we were babies, so it was like we got married. I was 22 years old, and Jason was 27. Yeah. So like, it wasn't like an adult thing where you invite someone over to impress them with your cooking. I think like we discovered that through being married. You know.
Yeah, completely.
We were full babies who, you know, I don't think I didn't quite know how to load a dishwasher, you know, like I remember like.
I certainly didn't.
So we were like learning how to take care of ourselves. It wasn't like an adult relationship where you're like, ooh, I'm going to like prepare this gorgeous thing and woo someone. It wasn't like that. The goal.
Yeah, but it's very sweet. I don't know. It's like what you described at the beginning, sort of like when you come into a sort of like marriage or just a like relationship, and it's like you probably bring a weird motley assortment of random dishes that have been in various apartments and dorms and just weird things. And then it changes over time.
Completely. You grow.
Yeah. I will say, though, in college, I had one of my best friends, Pat Raison, used to make the best, like, turkey sandwiches I'd ever had because he had worked at, like, a gourmet sandwich place in Northern Virginia called the Sherwood Gourmet. I think they still exist. But that was the best college food I had. And it was basically just, like, a baguette deli turkey with sliced green apple and honey mustard on it. And it was, and, like, a little, I would have with some brie cheese. That was college food to me because he would make it all the time. Because we'd get really high and watch Phantom Menace over and over, eating these wonderful sandwiches.
I also didn't grow up cooking. Like, I really left it all up to mom. So I do remember, like, like that college food of my own. When we got married, I thought that Jason would be the one who was, like, chiefly cooking. Like, we didn't know that was going to be what it was. But, like, I learned to make chicken parmesan. So, like, that was, like, you remember I would make that for you, I think.
Oh, that was so good.
So, like, pouring into a sheet pan a little olive oil and then dipping, like, chicken and egg and breadcrumbs from a jar, like, from a can.
You haven't made that in a while. You should make that.
Why would I make it that way, though? That's the thing. Like, there was, like, a certain way of making things we just didn't know how to cook yet, you know? It was delicious.
It was delicious.
But it was like taking, like, a slice of mozzarella, like, sandwich slice.
We also cooked, like, in our early married years, it was a lot on the crock pot.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where everything had that same crock pot taste.
Yeah, we had to give up on that.
Like, you just could, like, you could make whatever you wanted to in there, but it would always taste the same.
I agree. I hate crock pots.
Yeah.
The only good thing that I like making in a crock pot is apple butter. But even now that I have the Le Creuset, like, it's way better made than it is.
I don't need a crock pot anymore. I've got a Le Creuset.
You just stick that Dutch oven in the oven and you've got the crock pot, you know? We've got to get rid of that crock pot. I don't know why we still have it.
Yeah.
Haven't used.
It's for This Is Us cosplay.
Oh my god. That's not what you want.
Oh.
That's risky.
God.
It's good for, like,
extremely.
It's good for queso or something, like, in a party situation. So that way it's just, like, staying there. It doesn't get that cheese film.
Well, when you're repurposing your punch bowl to become your, root cellar, you're probably not using your crock pot for queso a whole lot.
No.
Although I did make queso once in quarantine, though.
Oh, it sounds really good, actually, now that I say that.
I did.
We should do that.
You should definitely.
That sounds incredible. Do you do it with American cheese to get the melt?
Yes, white American cheese. Land O'Lakes is the best. And then a little garlic powder and like
the old El Paso green chili.
Those just green chilies out of the can. That's
Yeah.
the best thing. Throw those in there, or as much as you want of those. And that to me is like heaven.
Remember Chipotle? Did you guys ever have Chipotle's queso in the brief? I mean, I don't know if they still have it.
Yeah.
When they tried, but they were like, we said everything was going to be not processed, so we can't do the processed cheese, and it was all grainy.
Yes, they couldn't do it. You need American cheese for this.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Wrapping up, if there was anything, and this is for both of you, if there was anything that you could just magically suddenly know how to make completely perfectly, whether that's something from your childhood that you really liked or something super fancy that you've had and would love to be able to recreate, what would that be?
Okay, this is not fancy. I can immediately tell you what this is. Speaking of like Southern Mexican restaurants on the eastern side, there is something called pollo con crema or
arroz con pollo.
Or arroz con pollo.
Depends on where you go.
ACP, and that's not what arroz con pollo is in Mexico or anywhere else. It is it's grilled chicken, like small bits of grilled chicken in a sauce that is mostly queso mixed with sour cream a little bit. And I don't usually like sour cream, or it's not sour cream, it's crema, but the same. And it's like this thin, cheesy, milky sauce. And it's so good, and it's so like for white people. And there are articles written about how this is not real food, and it's still so delicious. And I would love to make that.
In big bold letters, it says, "This is not real."
I would love to make that. It was my favorite college food. And I would love to make that with Mexican rice, which I made like Cuban rice.
Why don't you do it? Make it. Try it.
I don't think it's going to be as good as that.
I think it's going to be close.
We can try it.
Okay.
I need to find some like hallmarks of it to see like what it is. My Mexican rice is not as good as like a restaurant Mexican rice. I don't know what the difference is. And then I would like to make refried beans, which by the way, I did buy some lard and I bought, which is in the fridge right now and that won't expire until September. So I still have time to make it. And then I have like a thing of dried pinto beans. So I am still going to try to make like Mexican restaurant refried beans, which by the way, you can't really get very much in New York. Like it's more of an outside, I don't know, like that runny, delicious bean. I would love to be able to make that. I feel like the refried beans that you get here are a little healthier. They're not as good as what I grew up with, and I want to learn how to make that.
I think for me, I would like to. We love going to London. We love England. We'd probably live there in a heartbeat if we could. And there's so much great food there that I really enjoy, like that. Traditional British shit is just delicious.
Jason loves a Scotch egg.
Love a Scotch egg. Maybe a Scotch egg that was just delicious once.
It's very easy. Yeah.
I would like to learn how to make like their meat pies and like the Cornish pasties.
Sure.
With the the beef and the potato and the onion, and it's got that rounded edge that you're supposed to use as a handle.
Yeah.
If you're eating it in a mine.
Flaky taste. I know a lot of like, I feel like I have made a meat pie in the history of our being together, but I feel like it's so much work to do the pastry and that.
Yeah.
But I would do that.
That would be delicious. It's one of my favorite. You get to London, you fly into Heathrow, you take the train over to Paddington, and then you go to that Cornish pasty place. Right there by the entrance. Get you one for the ride home. It's wonderful.
The ride home.
The flight back? Are you going back immediately?
Either way. I mean, you get one there and then you... Another tradition, though, of ours, when we land at Heathrow and then go to Paddington, we always get a plain Whopper with cheese.
From Burger King.
From Burger King, because their Burger King, any Burger King basically in Europe, light years better than American Burger Kings.
But also the reason why we do this is because when I was in college, London had their burger renaissance. I feel like you could not get a burger there. Like at a pub, you would get like a burger, but it was really hamburger steak, which is just like this,
a lot of onions in it.
This like this mealy, dry brown beef. Not too long after Mad Cow, also.
Right.
With like little chunks of onion in it, just disgusting. That's not what I want from a burger. And now you can get a burger anywhere you go. But when I was in college, like, obviously I would be like, I have to have a burger. And so we would get it from Burger King. It was like the only place, like, except for there was a TGI Fridays, which I don't think exists anymore.
Yeah.
But we did not have a lot of money. So that was like a treat.
Yeah, it really was.
And I remember Jason took me when you were there. We did go to because I went to TGI Fridays, I think, like 2 times the entire time that I was there. And when we went, it would be like, oh, this is a night fucking out. We went like... We didn't have any money, and everything in London, especially then, like the pound was so strong, and so like we would be like, my favorite places to go were this like one pub that for £2 you could get a bowl of soup and a piece of bread, and like that was like a banging meal. But when we would go to TGI Fridays, which I think the burger might have been like £10, which is like that was a lot of fucking money.
Can I just chime in?
Please.
I want to say we found this pub in one of the last trips we took to London.
We did.
And Kristen ordered the soup and literally cried when it tasted like shit.
Oh,
it's not good. It was like not good at all. But it was like at the time, it was like everything that I needed. To get back. Well, no, I cried, Jason.
Well, you cried because a friend died, but also you cried because the soup was different, and I think that was a real big moment for you. It wasn't
the same. A very good friend who I had lived with in London, like, had passed away. So,
yes.
But yes, like that is the reason why I was crying over this very bad soup.
It was the soup. Let's be real.
So yeah, TGI Fridays. You took me to TGI Fridays, and I remember you put the dinner on your credit card, and I remember seeing.
I'll take care of this.
You did, and I remember we did not pay that credit card off until we were married. That TGI Fridays trip, which maybe cost £60 or something like that, because we went all out. We did get the appetizer plate, and we maybe got a drink. Whatever we got was covered in Jack Daniels. We definitely were paying the interest on that for a solid year.
Oh, easily, yeah.
God bless. We did it. Made it.
Well, Kristen, Jason, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. This was a blast. It was super nice to talk to you guys. And it was also very inspiring, a lot of inspiration around both actually you really using the shit out of the stuff we have. I gotta cycle some of my bone bags through. I can't just let them pile up.
It was so, I feel like my parents had it so much, and our grandparents had it so much easier. They would take like whatever leftovers after every meal that they weren't going to eat and just dump them in the yard. Isn't this crazy? Like that they would. I remember at my grandparents, we would take the leftovers.
The bears gotta eat.
Well, it's true. We would dump them into like the garden across the way, and so either it would be instant compost, or it would be food for like the birds and the animals. And there are bears where I'm from, so like they would fucking eat the food in the yard.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. We just create so much waste.
Yeah.
Please don't in the year of 2020 casually be like, God, I wish there were bears in Manhattan. You know it'll happen.
Hey, it could literally happen next week.
We do have a lot of new birds.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of new birds here that haven't been like, and you look it up on like Nextdoor, and some like bird aficionado on Nextdoor is like, this bird hasn't been in Manhattan in 40 years.
It's true.
That is by far the nicest thing that has ever happened on Nextdoor.
It really is.
In our neighborhood on Nextdoor, our neighborhood is not that. Like, it's just mostly like people being. Our Nextdoor is both new birds and people who are desperately upset that homeless people have been moved into hotels.
Yes.
Like, it's like fucking awful.
So
either you have this beautiful new bird with a photo and a story of the bird's origin, or you have someone who would rather a homeless person live outside during the middle of a pandemic.
And that's the Hell's Kitchen Nextdoor, everyone. Log in right now, nextdoor.com.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but for me, my favorite thing is drifting off to sleep thinking about how many empty hotel rooms are around me at any given time. I just love being like, I'm not using it because I'm in my own home that I'm lucky enough to have. But if I don't fall asleep within 3 miles of 7,000 empty hotel rooms, I can't get there.
Yeah. It's like a blanket, really. You need it just to hug you, that information.
You need to know that those hotels are not being used.
Yeah.
But, wow, isn't that so awful? Jesus Christ.
It's terrible. I think
that's Western.
I think I may just cut this off at there are a lot of new birds.
That's good.
Go for it.
You should cut it off.
All right, that is it. That is all for this week's episode of Stay for Dinner. Thanks again to Kristen and Jason for joining us. You can follow them on Twitter at Kristen Cheeks and at Sonic Dork, respectively, to keep up with them. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. It really helps more people find the show, and that in turn helps there be more show. I really try not to read the reviews as a practice, but I saw that there are some nice ones on Apple Podcasts just out of the corner of my eye. If you wanted to add some more for me to just brush past, that would be awesome. I really appreciate it. Please consider doing so. I am at DC Pierson on Twitter or at DEECEE Pierson on Instagram. If you decide you want to cook along at home, please tag me. I would love to see your food and love to hear how it went. My interstitial music is by Advance Bass, the amazing Owen Ashworth. The intro song is July 4th, 2004 by Jason Anderson, and the cover art is by Sarah Beacon. That's Becan. Find her on Instagram. I've written a couple of novels, The Boy Who Couldn't Sleep and Never Had To, and Crap Kingdom. Please support your local bookstore in whatever form they exist right now. And if you like hearing me talk, I read the audiobook versions of both of those books, available wherever audiobooks get to you. That is all for this week's episode. Have a good one. Bye.